did I choose my research question? Okay, well, I guess the first thing to say is that my research question has changed over time, but the first research question that I worked on grew, I think, kind of naturally out of some work that I had been doing on a different animal, a different question. And I worked on grasshoppers when I was a graduate student, and grasshoppers are insects, and insects have a segmented body plan. And I got very interested in how segmented body plans are built. So I wanted to study animals with a segmented body plan. So that was the initial question. But the thing to share, one important thing to share, is I think it's really sometimes the most creative ideas for questions come from, not from reading, but from actually doing and observing in the lab. So we've followed several other questions once we got working with our segmented worms by making observations in the lab, looking down the microscope, and just noticing things or wondering about unusual things that we would see. And we have developed several sort of distinct research projects based on observations that we made as we were going along. So I guess I want to encourage people to be curious, to ask questions, to notice the unusual things, and they might turn out to be a really important research avenue.
Well, that's always a good question. It turns out there's many different kinds of questions, many types of great questions to be asking. And I think there's no such thing as the most important question. I think many questions are very important. And when you decide to choose what you want to spend your blood, sweat, and tears, and time and energy working on, it's really important to understand clearly what the nature of the question is and what it's going to take to get an answer. So many people, for example, are interested in the origins of life or how the brain works and things like that. And these are very difficult questions to try to address. And you need to be able to think clearly about what it is you really want to learn from those kinds of questions, and how long and what kind of investment and time and money is it going to take for you to get those questions. And after all that time, will you really have the answers to the questions that you really are asking? So these are very important fundamental issues when you start a research career or a research project. All of these things are very important and crucial factors before you actually begin the research project itself.
How did I choose my research question? It kind of chose me a little bit. So when I started graduate school, I had a couple ideas. My professor was really known. He was famous for understanding the mechanics of how fish feed. And I had a whole project that I wanted to do with that. But it turned out that project wasn't going as quickly as we wanted, and so I had a side project that I came up with trying to understand how fish swim in turbulent flows. And the reason why I decided to choose this topic was he had a piece of equipment in the lab called particle image velocimetry, and it's basically what engineers use to visualize water flow. So they put all these particles in the water, they shine a very weak laser light sheet in the water. This lights up all the particles, and when the water swirls around, you can see the shape of the water. Usually it's invisible, but now you can see it because it's seeded with all these particles. So he had this really cool technique. He was trying to understand the significance of shark tails versus like a tail of a bluegill sunfish. I was interested in visualizing the flow behind rocks and logs and things like that to see how fish could save energy behind it. So really it was this kind of opportunity of being in the lab and seeing this new piece of equipment and my own kind of historical background of kind of fishing to come up with this question. And that's what started me on this line of research to understand how fish can exploit the energy of their environment to save in the cost of swimming. And that kind of morphs as you get deeper and deeper into the research, right? Your own research kind of evolves. Because of my work with fish swimming in flows, I became really interested in how fish sense water flow. And they have the sensory system that's unique to fishes and some aquatic amphibians that's called the lateral line system. And it's a series of hair cells, very similar to the ones you have in your inner ear, but they have them spread along their body. So when the water flows past their body, it tickles these hair cells and they can sense the flow. So picture, instead of like a force field, like a Marvel action comic or something having a force field, it's like a sense field. So they can, in the dark, sense what's in the water due to any movement of the water. And that question made me realize that a trout is maybe not the easiest thing to use to understand. I wanted to understand at the kind of nerve cell level. So I wanted to understand what's going on in the brain as they're feeling these flow patterns along their body. The reason why we picked the zebrafish then is because it's such a powerful model. People call it a model system because there's so many attributes to it, so much is known about it, that it attracts lots of investigators to use these powerful techniques. So the fact that it's transparent, the fact that you can generate transgenic fish that have glowing neurons allows you to be able to answer specific questions about the lateral line that you couldn't for just, let's say, a goldfish that you buy at the pet store or something like that. With the zebrafish, you can actually peer into the transparent brain of the animal and see which neurons are lighting up. You can literally see what a fish is thinking while you're introducing a food particle or introducing flow to it. So this is a fish unlike any other fish, and so this is the reason why we choose zebrafish over other fish in studying the questions that we study in my lab.